It's past midnight on September 26, 1983. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is sitting in a chair inside a concrete bunker outside Moscow. His hands are resting on a desk. He is not panicking. But the screen in front of him is telling him that 5 American nuclear missiles are heading toward the Soviet Union, and he has about 9 minutes to decide whether to tell his superiors the world is ending. Petrov was 44 years old. He wasn't supposed to be on duty that night. He was covering for a colleague. He was an engineer by training, not a career military man, which meant he understood something most soldiers in that bunker didn't. He understood exactly how the machine in front of him actually worked, and exactly how it could fail. The system was called OKO, the Soviet Early Warning Satellite Network. It had just detected what looked like a missile launch from a base in Montana, then a second, then a third, then a fourth, then a fifth. All the computer models said, "This is real." All the protocols said, "Reported up the chain, immediately, no delay." The Cold War was at one of its most paranoid peaks. Just 3 weeks earlier, the Soviets had shot down a Korean civilian airliner, killing 269 people, and both sides were convinced the other was capable of anything. Petrov looked at the screen, and he did not pick up the phone the way the protocol demanded. What was going through his mind in that room is far stranger and far more human than the way history usually tells this story. Here's what almost nobody knows. Petrov didn't have some flash of divine calm. He said later that he felt, in his own words, like he was sitting on a hot frying pan. His legs, he said, felt like they weren't there. This wasn't the icy, unshakable hero from the movie version. This was a man in a full-body stress response, trying to think clearly while his own nervous system was screaming at him to act. So why didn't he act on the alarm? This is where the psychology gets interesting. In the 1980s, a researcher named Gary Klein was studying an entirely different group of people, firefighters. Klein worked with the US Army Research Institute, interviewing commanders who made split-second, high-stakes decisions in burning buildings, with no time to weigh pros and cons. What he found broke the existing model of how decisions were supposed to work. The dominant theory at the time said good decision-makers compare multiple options, weigh the evidence, calculate the odds. But Klein's firefighters didn't do that. They'd walk into a room, and within seconds, they just knew something was wrong, before they could say what. One commander pulled his entire crew out of a house seconds before the floor collapsed. Afterward, he couldn't explain why. He just said the fire didn't feel right. Klein called this recognition prime decision-making. The idea is simple, but it changes everything. Experts don't consciously analyze a situation. Their brain matches the current moment against thousands of stored patterns from experience. And when something breaks that pattern, the brain flags it as danger, as a feeling, not a thought. Not fear exactly, just wrongness. This is exactly what was happening inside Petrov's head that night. He knew the OKO system had been rushed into service. He knew it had quirks. Sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds had confused it before. And he knew something else, something almost too simple to be the reason the world didn't end. An actual American first strike, according to Soviet military doctrine, would not look like 5 missiles. It would look like hundreds, launched all at once, an overwhelming wave meant to guarantee total destruction. 5 missiles didn't fit the pattern. Something was off. But that's only half the story. Around the same time Klein was studying firefighters, a psychologist named Daniel Kahneman, working with Amos Tversky, was building a framework that would later win Kahneman the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002. They described 2 systems running inside every human mind. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional. It's the part of you that yanks your hand off a hot stove before you've consciously registered pain. System 2 is slow, deliberate, effortful. It's the part that does long division or reads a contract line by line. Here's the twist most people miss. System 1 isn't the dumb system, and System 2 isn't the smart one. System 1, when it's been trained by years of real expertise, can outperform System 2 in situations where there's no time to think. That's not intuition in the mystical sense. It's compressed experience, firing faster than conscious reasoning ever could. Petrov had spent years building missile detection systems himself. He understood their false positive rates. He understood their blind spots. In the space of about 2 minutes, without running a single formal calculation, his System 1 had already flagged the alert as probably false, based on a pattern his conscious mind hadn't even finished articulating. Let that sink in. The decision that may have prevented a global nuclear war wasn't made by careful, step-by-step logic under pressure. It was made by a gut feeling. A trained one, but still, fundamentally, a feeling. And it gets stranger. In 2002, cognitive scientist Gerd Gigerenzer at the Max Planck Institute in Berlin published research on what he called fast and frugal heuristics, simple mental shortcuts that, in the right environment, actually beat complex statistical models. Gigerenzer's argument was almost heretical for economics and decision theory. More information and more analysis time doesn't always make a decision better. Sometimes it makes it worse because you drown the one signal that matters in noise.
Petrov had almost no time and incomplete information. Under classical decision theory, that should have made his judgment worse. Instead, the constraint might be exactly what saved him. No time to second-guess the pattern his brain had already recognized, no time to talk himself into just following protocol. So that settles it, right? Petrov's brain, trained by experience, simply outran the machine, and reason gets to sit this one out as the hero of the story. Well, not quite, because here's the part historians rarely mention. Petrov didn't fully trust his gut either. He hedged. He reported the alert up the chain as a system malfunction, a guess, not a certainty. He was gambling his career and possibly his life on being right. If more confirming data had come in during those minutes, and it very nearly did, because a second wave of sensor data was ambiguous, his intuition might have flipped. Some analysts who've studied the incident argue that Petrov got lucky as much as he got it right. The ground radar that could have independently confirmed or denied a launch simply hadn't picked anything up yet, because Soviet radar couldn't see over the horizon that far. He was making a bet in a fog, and the fog happened to clear in his favor. And it gets worse in a way, because this means the world's survival that night didn't rest on some flawless hero with nerves of steel and perfect judgment. It rested on one tired, frightened engineer's imperfect gut call, backed by nothing but pattern recognition and a hedge he wasn't even sure was right. Was he free in that moment, making a clear-eyed choice? Or was he just a nervous system, shaped by years of training, doing the only thing it knew how to do under that kind of load? Maybe both. Maybe there's no clean line between the two. Petrov was later neither punished nor rewarded in any meaningful way. He was quietly reassigned. The Soviet military didn't want to admit the system had a flaw, and they certainly didn't want to admit that a human being's hunch had overridden a machine built by the state. He spoke about the incident publicly only decades later, almost by accident, and even then he refused to call himself a hero. He said he was just a man who happened to be on shift that night. The same mechanism that ran through Petrov's mind in that bunker is sitting in your brain right now. It's the same fast, silent, pattern-matching system that tells you a stranger's smile is off before you know why, that makes an experienced doctor glance at a patient and sense something is wrong before the test results confirm it, that once in a while, quietly, without applause, might be the only thing standing between an honest mistake and a catastrophe. You don't need a bunker or a blinking red screen to carry it. You're carrying it right now, untested, unnoticed, waiting for a moment it might never get. Petrov never thought of that night as courage. He thought of it as arithmetic that happened to be right. Somewhere, quietly, a version of that same arithmetic is running in you too, and you will probably never know until the one night it matters whether you can trust it.